Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Coaching Uncovered podcast. My name is Chris Berry, and I'm going to be your host for today. Joining us, we have Arjuna George. Arjuna, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Beautiful morning, and it's great to be on the podcast. Thanks.
It is a beautiful morning, great start to the week, and I'm
Yeah,
excited to talk
yeah,
about some
exactly.
coaching programs. So,
Yeah.
before we kind of dive into the specifics of your business, everything that you do, could you just go ahead and give everyone that's either listening or watching an overview of what you coach people on?
For sure. Yeah. So I'm fairly new to the coaching arena. 2022 is when I launched, but really what I focus on is high performing individuals. So that could be first responders, healthcare, teachers, professionals in their own entrepreneurs, business owners, CEOs, all those high performing individuals. Because really what resonated with me is that's how I see myself as well. So I can relate and I can speak the same language as those high performers that I work with. So that's kind of the whole thing. Essentially, I started off as being a burnout coach, a
Mm,
burnout prevention coach, because that's really where my passion lays, is about helping people and supporting people thrive versus burning out in their occupations.
mm,
Unfortunately, I burnt out my previous occupation, which led me to this. And so essentially, I started off as burnout prevention, and then I kind of slowly morphed into I think this is more about self leadership than just burnout. So now I help high performers identify, work on, strengthen their own self leadership.
okay. And what made you get into this space? Obviously, you mentioned you burned out yourself, but what made you go from what you did before? And even for everyone listening, could you explain what you did before and like
Yep.
what led you to this and like making this a full time profession?
Well, a complete polar opposite. I was a first responder, so I was in the fire service for almost 25 years. And the last five was as a fire chief in my community. And I essentially, unfortunately, in 2020, kind of just hit a wall of complete and utter burnout, nervous system dysregulation. Everything was just not working well. And as a high performer, when you see yourself not working well, that really hurts. So when I went through that experience, I actually hired coaches. I actually had three at that time when I was going through my burnout journey, and realized that I can contribute to the world in other ways than going back to the fire service operationally. So I completely pivoted my whole life. I always kind of saw myself as a coach in the fire service. I was always coaching people to get better, to improve self development. I think that was one of those key areas that kind of I worked on through my whole career. And I always dreamt of being an actual coach, and that was my career. I just never thought it would actually happen. I thought maybe in my 60s, 70s, maybe 1 year down the road, I'll become a coach when I'm retired from the fire service. But I was kind of, unfortunately, prematurely left the fire service. And I was kind of like, okay, so what's next? What can I do next? And thankfully, the amazing coaches that I had all led me in a direction that allowed me to see there was light at the end of the tunnel, that there was other options than going back to the fire service or just being a miserable person and not enjoying life from that point on. So I went to school. I went to Royal Roads University in BC, Canada, and just went through my whole development there of becoming a coach and launched my business, Silver Arrow Coaching and Consulting. And that's kind of where my passion lays now, is to support high performers, those that want to feel that they're getting burnt out, feel like they're coming close to their wits end. A lot of them are like, do I want to be in this occupation any longer? Is this sustainable? And I just support them through that journey to see the light, that there is other options if it's not fitting them anymore. Because unfortunately, and especially the fire service, but also most first responder agencies, when you join, you're kind of there for life. So it's kind of nice to share the stories and true stories like myself, that it is possible to leave that and to do something completely pivot and change your life 100%. So now I'm an author, I'm a podcaster, and I'm a coach. Complete pivot from 2020 when I was a fire chief. So
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And when you start working with people to overcome all of these things, obviously you have high performance, but you also have that with underneath that, you have burnout. That is an aspect that has a tendency within high performers and stuff. What are some of the things that you walk people through? Obviously, not every single aspect you don't need to outline now, but what are some of kind of the main pillars of what you walk them through?
Well, really, when I saw burnout as a symptom, and I was kind of first looking at it as a symptom. And now I've just in the last maybe 6 months to a year, I've kind of really identified that it's more than just burnout. Burnout was a result of lack of self leadership. And self leadership is not a term you hear very often. You hear leadership, leading others, but really, if we want to be thriving in our careers, we don't want to burn out, we want to be that high performer, we really need to focus on our own self leadership. And what I look at that as being mind, body, and spirit, being healthy in all those aspects that we show up in the world as a human, as an entrepreneur, as a coach. And so that's really where I focus a lot of it. So, values, your purpose, who you are as a person. It really comes down to leading self first to be able to not burn out down the road, essentially. Yeah.
Understood. And you've been doing this for 2 years now, right? You've been saying as you're going through obviously this experience of you going through that burnout, we're looking about 4 years ago. During this past 2 years of you actually owning the coaching business, what have been some of the favorite parts, like highlights? And one set of, let's say, the biggest challenges that you've been facing over the past 2 years?
Well, as a recovering burnout person, I am really, really paying attention to my how much I put into this business. So I'm putting my heart and soul into it, but I'm also doing it with a lot of boundaries. I'm also doing it with a lot of time boundaries as well. So I'm not working around the clock. I'm making sure that I am making this a sustainable business that I can do for 10, 20, 30 years. So really that has been quite eye-opening that I can actually do that as a high performer, still show up as a high performer, but not work 24/7.
Hmm.
So that's been a quite a treat to see. For me, some days I coach 5 or 6 people in a row, and that is a lot of brain capacity to do in one day. But I also schedule myself that I don't have very many of those. I schedule myself that I'm, maybe 2, 3 clients a day is max because I want to be 100% with my client versus thinking about my next client or my previous client. I want to make sure that I'm 100% present. And that, my whole burnout journey really has allowed me to do a lot of introspection and learn how to be super, super present. Be with a person 100%. Nothing else in the world matters at this moment. I'm just talking to you or I'm talking to my client. Those have been real treats that I've kind of that have helped me in my life for sure. I think the early days there was a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of feelings like why would anyone want to hire and spend any money talking to me? Like why that doesn't make sense. Why would people want that? So there's a little bit of that I had to work through. There was a little bit of, is this actually going to work? Is there going to be enough people out there in the world to hire a coach? Those are always huge questions. And going through the coaching school that I did, which was premier coaching education, that was the biggest question. Is like, there's so many coaches out there. How are we going to stand out? How are we going to make this a living? And so that was always in the back of my head is like, ugh, like, how's this actually going to work? Am I going to be successful? So those are some of the challenges that I had to overcome. And it all kind of goes back to that imposter's syndrome. Like, am I good enough? Am I the person? Why would anyone want to spend hundreds of dollars talking to me? So I had to work through all that. And, eventually I came to the realization that a lot of them were coming to me asking for help versus me having to try to sell myself too much. So a lot of word of mouth, a lot of um, you know, testimonials, that kind of stuff helped people just come to me versus me having to sell because I'm not a salesperson. That's one area that I don't enjoy about the coaching aspect or any business. I'm not a salesperson. I don't like to necessarily be that salesperson. So if I can put out a good product through coaching and under other forms, then essentially I don't have to do the sales because they're just going to come to me and gravitate towards me because they see what value I bring to the table. And that comes through my book, that comes through coaching, that comes through workshops, keynotes, presentations. That's kind of my business is not just coaching. It encompasses all those things. I do a lot of workshops and a lot of keynote presentations. And those always build at least one or two clients out of every conversation, every event that I attend. So there's been lots of ups and downs. I would say more ups than downs. Lots of lessons learned. I've never actually been my own boss. I've never been an entrepreneur myself. So there's a lot of things there in the background of trying to understand, the bookkeeping end of things, the scheduling end of things, anywhere I can cut corners to make my efficiency better. And I'm a big fan of AI. I use AI all the time to just help me streamline, not do my work for me, but streamline my work. And I'm also like technology. I've always been a fan of technology, so I always use those areas to support me, so I don't burn out. Essentially,
Makes sense.
yeah.
So, favorite part it sounds like is working with the people, having those clients, seeing the transformations, seeing like a very results, like customer centric sort of coach that you really want to make sure that they get success and everything like that. So that sounds like the favorite part. And then the challenging part is obviously you kind of mentioned in the beginning, like the imposter syndrome, all the little back end stuff that happens in regards to running a coaching business. And then right now, you say one of the biggest, we'll say, challenges, roadblocks for you as of now is just the selling piece. But I mean, essentially, you're solving that by seeking to have a good product. But is that the biggest challenge you say that you're currently facing? Or are there other challenges that like, oh no, this is like the biggest hurdle that I'm facing now?
I would say that is the biggest challenge for sure. And I think the biggest challenge is, there's people out there that come to me and they're like, yes, I need your service. But then I know there's a lot of people that need my service or need a coach, not necessarily me, but don't understand the value behind coaching and putting their dollars behind what they need to actually to move forward in life and to thrive. And so that is convincing people the power of coaching.
Yeah.
Um, Not necessarily convincing, but educating, providing knowledge about the power of coaching, about how it can transform your life. Like honestly, I did therapy, I did a lot of modalities, but coaching was really the bottom line that allowed me to see there was a light at the end of the tunnel from burnout.
Mm,
Therapy has supported me, but really coaching was allowed me to see the future. And that's what coaching's all about, is right present
yeah.
time to where you want to be in life. And I don't know if a lot of people understand the power of coaching.
Mm,
So I think that the education piece is probably the biggest struggle that I have right now, and that's kind of my whole life is trying to educate that message, but still it
mm,
doesn't reach everyone. So that's
yeah.
definitely the biggest challenge for sure. Yeah,
Okay. And
a
when you
fun
say that,
challenge.
yeah, when you say like reaching the message to people, are you referring more on the fact of like, let's say you're speaking to an individual, they're just not getting the power of coaching, or are you referring to like there's this whole big group of people and it's just like you aren't tapping into those people from like a marketing perspective? Which of those two, or is it both
Yeah,
even?
exactly. No, I think when I talk to people, they see the value of coaching. It's the people that maybe don't connect with a coach or connect with
Mm,
me per se
yeah,
and understand the power of coaching. They just kind of like, oh, coaching, life coaching is kind of the
yeah,
label that always gets put on it, right?
yeah,
And I don't need life coaching. I need something else, right? So it's getting that message out that it's not the weekend warrior coach. It is actually coaching is a profession, and it's not a something you just do for a 7 hour course online and become a coach.
yeah,
So kind of overcoming that barrier for sure.
true.
So it's the people who I'm not necessarily connected with, but are out there and they need the support. I know they do.
Yeah, that makes sense. On that point of obviously the marketing and kind of getting people into your ecosystem, you touched upon, okay, I'm doing word of mouth, just even from testimonials. Those are kind of my big things that people see, and then they want to go ahead and come with me, or even just referrals, so on and so forth. You also mentioned events that you do. You say that you do some workshops as well. Is there anything else that you do in order to kind of get people into your business, or are these just the main things that you do as of right now?
Yeah, so workshops, keynotes, presentations. I'm kind of trying to expand my virtual presentation process right now into 2025 because uh, traveling, as we know, is very time consuming, and it's not the best to travel in the world sometimes with delays and cancellations and weather and all that. So I'm trying to pivot a little bit more to virtual presentations for 2025. But I'm also branching out into corporate as well, where it's not just those high performers; it's also people that are in corporate positions that just need that extra support. Maybe not burnout, because burnout is everywhere in every occupation. Um, Definitely my book, Burnt Around the Edges, which is this one right here, which is my whole story going through the fire service, getting burnt out, but how I got out of burnout and pivoted my life. That is essentially is a big business card that allows me to get into organizations or groups of people that probably would never connect with me in the beginning. So that's been a huge tool. But the workshops and keynotes, like I said, I'm always guaranteed to pull out a couple of clients from each one of those for sure. And my podcast as well. I have a podcast called Beneath the Helmet, which is about the mind, body, and spirit of being an elite firefighter. And so that podcast also supports the growth of my coaching business. It's sponsored by my business, so it's kind of part and parcel of it. And it brings people in to just get to know me, because really that is the essence of coaching. If they don't connect with you, if they don't actually see you as a human, they're not going to want to put money behind that and pay you. So it's really getting behind the camera, getting people to understand who you are as a person. That's how you connect with people, and that's how they resonate and say, "Hey, Chris, I need to hire you. I want to work with you." Um, so that's kind of my whole game right now, is that aspect of podcasting, workshops, presentations, my book. I have another book coming out. All these kind of aspects just dabble in and fill in the business. And it also makes it very diverse as well. It's not strictly, I'm not sitting behind a screen coaching people every day, single, just that's all I do. I think that could actually lead to burnout if that's all I ever did, was just talk to people and coach. It gives you a bit of energy when you actually go out and do a presentation or build a workshop or do a virtual keynote, whatever that looks like. It honestly, it feeds your soul, right? So
Yeah.
um, yeah, so it's nice to be able to be that diverse. And I'm also a very holistic person, so I actually teach this thing called TRE, which is tension trauma release exercises. And essentially what it does is re-regulates your nervous system. And so I kind of use that hand in hand with the coaching. So we're talking about the mind and everything like that with coaching and our mindsets and everything like that. But then I bring also a holistic approach where we talk about using the body to actually work through some of the things as well. Because I think the body stores a lot, and we can't really process and move much further if that's holding us back.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. And one thing that I like the way you touched upon, because it's just interesting dichotomy of playing on both sides of, okay, if you only stay talking to people on an individual basis and one-on-one, but then there's obviously the other side of things where people don't necessarily seek to garnish that relationship that you were describing, of them getting to know, like, and trust you and everything like that. So it's like this weird mix of, you want to try to automate and do stuff, but it's like, okay, you can't have it too automated because then you don't actually form a relationship with the person, like you said.
Yep.
So no, I definitely agree. So you have all of these people that are coming in from these mediums. I know you mentioned sales is one of your least favorite parts, the biggest challenge that you're currently facing right now. What is that process that you take from someone being like, hey, I'm interested, and they're a lead to you, to actually turning into a paying client of yours? What's that journey look like?
Well, it's a lot of communication. It's a lot of conversation, and I do dedicate a lot of time towards that potential future client. So I will offer, lots of connection times, lots of, meet and greets. I build that relationship. So it's not somebody calls me up and says, "Hey, I'm going to hire you. Let's start tomorrow." Usually, any of my clients, we've been fostering a relationship either years or months for sure.
Hmm.
And being in the fire service for almost 25 years, I know a lot of people across North America, maybe not super well, but I know them and they know me not super well either. So they also have that little bit of a foundation. If I'm talking about first responders, that they already know who I am. They know my reputation. They know a little bit. So it kind of builds that trust without even ever meeting or talking to me. And then I just slowly just build that. And honestly, I do it in a very natural, organic way. There's no structure. There's funnels obviously in place, like, from the workshops and books and stuff like that. But I do it very organically. I do it honestly, like a coaching conversation goes, and not super, super structured. Uh, it's all about relationships, honestly. So if you build a relationship or authentically, not like an AI bot, but authentically, then people are going to gravitate to you. And that's how I've just done my whole leadership style through my whole life. And that's how I got into coaching as well. It's just truly vulnerable, authentic, who I am, no holds barred. An open book. So people ask me questions about my burnout journey all the time. And I think that sets the stage for them to be okay. So it is okay to say that I feel burnt out, or it is okay to
Mm.
say that I'm feeling overwhelmed, or it is okay to say that I need help, I need support. It is okay because this coach in front of me is telling me that this is okay. And this person used to be a fire chief. Like, I think that really sets the tone. And that's essentially how I do it, is just to build that relationship. No big structure, no big gimmicks. It's just very straightforward building that relationship.
Yeah. So let's say you build a relationship, person's like, yes, I want to work with you. They get started. The two questions. The first one is it primarily just one on one, is what you do with people? Like only one on one as of right now?
So right now, I'd love to get in groups. I just haven't. I'm kind of doing baby steps to get to there. So I'm kind of mastering the skill of coaching, and then I'll
Hmm.
gravitate towards, because that is really where you're going to scale your business, through group coaching.
Yeah.
So I'm getting there for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Understood. So one on one, and they meet with you. What are some strategies that you employ to keep people happy? Because this is obviously within coaching, there's the mental pieces that you talked about as well, right? So it's not only the fact of the actual tactical stuff, but there's like the mental of like, oh no, like, is this going to work? Is this like progressing fast enough? Or, oh, maybe I'm not cut out for this, those limiting beliefs, as you said, right? What are some things that you employ to help get your clients success and keep them invested in the process?
Well, goes back to self leadership. I think they need to spend some time to understand who they are as a person. So a lot of people don't understand values. They don't understand, that
Mhm.
framework. They might have heard values before. They might have, said, I stand for this, but have they really dug into what that looks like and who they are as a person?
Hmm.
I do a lot of assessments, mostly around stress and overwhelm, to kind of get a baseline with them. So I use heart math, assessments, and also stress and well-being assessments, um, just to kind of get a baseline with them. I got lots of tools, the Ikigais, and I got, the Wheel of Life, all that kind of stuff that I utilize with them. But I really tailor every single conversation to what they need. So I really meet the client where they are. So I don't necessarily have a program in place where, okay, week one, we're doing this. Week two, we're doing this. Week three, we're going to cover this. I'm a very holistic and in the moment coach. So where I meet them essentially where they are versus having too much of a structure in play. Um, so I essentially use any tool that needs to happen, needs to pop up in that moment. Other than that, I don't have a tool for week two, week three, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. So you do all of that, you walk them through, and then when it comes to just even retention and stuff like that, do you ever come across people of like, oh, that mental roadblock? And obviously, you kind of mentioned some of the things you do, like you understand themselves, right? Knowing internally what the biggest challenges are and everything like that. When you come across people that maybe face those limiting beliefs, how do you help them kind of overcome that? Would you say?
Oh well, obviously that's the power of coaching, is to, reframe and, reframe everything they're talking about, right? Look at
Mhm.
their biases, reframe their biases, and usually just through conversation, allowing them space to be able to see that, holy cow, I've been seeing the world in a totally different lens than I do now. A lot of emotional intelligence, a lot of introspection, But honestly, it's through the coaching conversation that really that happens. It's not a tool per se that happens. It's really, for me, it's me being brave enough to ask them, what's the evidence behind that? Is that actually true? And most coaches, or some coaches, I shouldn't say most, some coaches might not be comfortable enough to say that to somebody, and so that might get missed through those areas. And it's a tough conversation to have when you're saying, okay, is that actually true? Is that legit, or is that just something you're making up in your mind? And the people that I work with, there's also a time that I have to actually push them off to a therapist or a professional clinician, where it's like, okay, there's something much deeper that I am not skilled enough to dig into, that's holding them back, that's keeping that mindset, that belief in play. With coaching, it's still not happening. So we need some extra professional assistance, and that's where sometimes you have to, say, all right, I think it's maybe time to see a therapist, and then come back and see me, so we can dig a little deeper. Because when you're talking about beliefs, when you're talking about that kind of stuff, that's probably very, very deep, maybe even childhood trauma or childhood issues, right? That resonate and see you all the way into adulthood. And coaching might make a little dent in it, but you might have to go a little deeper
True.
into that to make change. Yeah.
True. I like it. Well, Arjuna, this has been awesome. I'm sure we could probably talk about. I try to contain myself because otherwise I would be here for hours with people about like, oh, tell me this, tell me this, oh, tell me more about your story. So I contain myself, but I know we could probably go for hours. It has been great having you on. For anybody that has been listening or watching and they're like, wow, I really resonate with Arjuna. I want to get connected, whether it be being a client or just even chatting. What is the best way for somebody to go ahead and get in communication with you?
Well, my website, silverarrowco.com. So silverarrowco.com, or Arjuna at silverarrowco.com is my email. I'm on all the socials. You can also find my book on Burnt Around the Edges on Amazon, or directly through burntaroundtheedges.com. And the podcast is beneaththehelmet.ca. And it's definitely a firefighter focused podcast. But honestly, there's a lot of people that are just in the world of either first responders, frontline workers, or in the mental health profession, that really gravitate to that podcast. Um, yeah, but silverarrowco.com would be the best way to connect with me for sure.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Arjuna, it was great chatting, and I look forward
Likewise.
to chatting more in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Of course. Well, everyone, I hope that you got as much value out of this episode as I did. As I said before, I know I could probably talk for hours and hours more with Arjuna. Two things that I do want to highlight that I took away from this episode. Number one is talking about imposter syndrome, right? Yes, Arjuna has only been doing this for 2 years, but you can tell in the way he communicates. If you guys go ahead and click on his website, you can see he has a lot of stuff thought through. He's very professional in everything that he does. And obviously, he's been getting success with his clients. And regardless of whatever degree you are, even if you have a ton of success, there's always these questions that come in the back of our mind. And I felt that our juniors did a really good job of explaining that it's these questions that are unfounded. And that's even the power he mentioned of coaching, of doing all of that, because as I just said before, they're unfounded. And so that's one valuable piece that I took away, because it's something that really holds a lot of coaches back from starting that business, from going to the next level, whatever that may be. Number one. And then number two was, I really liked how he was so customer success focused, right? Both in regards to the sales process and even in delivery. And then when also in the sales process, he's also so focused on building a relationship. It's not like, oh, come in, give me your money. Okay, get out. I'm done. I fulfilled my obligations. It wasn't like that. It was like, I genuinely care about you. And I know that when you have that sort of mentality, everything becomes a lot easier. So those are the two things that I really took away from this episode with Arjuna. If you were interested in reaching out to him, once again, go ahead and reach out to him on his socials. If you did like this episode, make sure you go ahead and you subscribe if you'd like to hear more of these type of episodes. And we'll go ahead and see you guys on the next episode of the Coaching Uncovered podcast.